I'm going to rank 3 Massachusetts cities that I consider to be the best investment cities in the state of Massachusetts. At the end of the video, I'll tell you which is the exact city that I would personally invest in, and it may be one you may or may not expect. So stick around and I'll give you guys my answer. So if you know the state of Massachusetts, it's obviously not just Cape Cod, it's not just Boston, it's a much larger area. So we're talking kind of this long line that goes across the state. We have Springfield in the corner, we have Worcester that goes up a little bit, and then Lowell at the top. Now, we're not specifically talking about Boston because it's obviously its own market within and of itself between Brookline and a few other small areas internally. I want to talk about the other big 3 cities that get a lot of notice from investors as a whole. So you have Worcester, Springfield, and Lowell, much different demographics across the board and booming markets. So let's kind of dive into this a little bit. So let's talk about Worcester, Massachusetts. It's a great market with a booming economy right now that's growing rapidly in the state. You have vacancy that hovers like kind of just around 3%, give or take. It keeps growing in rent by 2.7%, give or take year over year. And honestly, it shows a strong demand overall. It's a massive submarket within the Massachusetts area that should not be overlooked by anybody. Now, in terms of Lowell, Massachusetts, a little bit more north on that New Hampshire border, we're actually seeing a little bit of maybe a little bit of a rent kind of like softening for Lowell, but we're also seeing vacancy still hover around that 3% mark, which is pretty average at that area. It's a strong commuter market going into Boston. You know, it's a little less than 45 minutes to Boston without traffic. And it's a great area for people to essentially be a commuter city. And it's also, a tie-in to the New Hampshire market where people can kind of go to vacation and they live in Lowell and then they work in Boston. Pretty common strategy there. Then that leads me to Springfield, Massachusetts in the lower corner of the state. So we're seeing vacancy is a little bit higher than Worcester and also Lowell. Now, if you also look at kind of rent demand, it's kind of a little bit, but there's some stability. The big difference between Springfield versus Worcester and Lowell is actually the rental amounts. They're like 25-30% less than the other 2 locations. And so with all this in mind, what's kind of the better area if you think about it? Now, there's a lot of dynamics that go into each city. You got Lowell, which is, in my opinion, is a commuter city. Worcester is more of like an established economy. And then Springfield is kind of finding its own way. I think it's more of also a commuter city. It's developing its own local economy, but the rents are definitely worse. And there's typically, we see as a higher crime rate in Springfield. So what does that mean for you as an investor? So there's 5 categories I really want you to think about. There's cash flow, there's appreciation, there's tenant class, management, and entry price. So if I had to look at these 3 different cities, I'd break it down into those 5 categories. So let's start with Springfield. Typically, the entry price is much lower. The pricing of properties is much less than Worcester and Lowell. I would say the tenant class is probably a little bit weaker ranking in that sense, probably closer to C and D level, depending on how you want to value them. You might find a little bit better cash flow in Springfield than other markets, even though the rent is lower. Again, the pricing also adds up to it. And then appreciation, in my experience, has been, we've seen a little bit of an uptick in Springfield, like 3.7%, but to me, it's a little bit less than the other markets. Now let's talk about Worcester. So Worcester has a more strong economic demand. I would say the tenant class is a little bit higher than Springfield. Let's call it C. Essentially, it's kind of synonymous with Manchester, New Hampshire at this point. I'd say that the appreciation play is definitely there. You're seeing between like 3 and 4%. I'd say also cash flow, depending on what you're going for, it's not going to be as strong as other markets because it's gotten so much more expensive. So cash flow is a little bit weaker in that regard. Management perspective, it's actually, you can get a lot of properties tight in one area, so it can make it pretty easy. So, from that end, Worcester's not a bad pick. But now let's finish it with Lowell. Lowell's on the border, Massachusetts and New Hampshire. It's a big commuter city. To me, at the end of the day, the rents and depreciation, they're there. They're not as strong as Boston. I would say that Lowell and Worcester are almost synonymous. I think it's a strong, demanding market that, continues to grow and produce well. The tenant class, I think, is again, like kind of C class almost, kind of getting on that B class range. The management, it's a tight, community where you can actually have a lot of management occur easily. And those are kind of like the basic things you can consider. Now, rent-wise, it's still showing strong rent. So if I was house hacking for the first time, honestly, I wouldn't even blink at it. I'd go right to Worcester. That strong economic drive, you have the local colleges there. It's a fast-growing city. I think it's an excellent place to put my money down if I was just looking at investing for the first time, because it's a growing fast appreciation market, in my opinion, with strong economics in the local market. Lowell is another great market to consider if you're considering commuting or buying, bigger assets there where people might be commuters and workforce housing. But for me, Worcester is my pick. Now, if I was going to invest and put money in, I would rather have less headaches as an investor. Tenant class matters a lot to me. So I'd be eyeballing between Lowell and also Worcester. Now I'm in the New Hampshire area. So I'm actually, Worcester is very synonymous in terms of, work and like kind of tenant class as to Manchester, but it's farther geography wise for me. So if I was going to be an investor and buy a standalone asset, I would end up just going to Lowell. If you found this video useful, please like, share, and subscribe. That helps us get noticed, and our goal is to help 1 million people reach financial independence. We would love your help and support doing that. If we could help you at any point in time to increase your net wealth, definitely reach out. We are open books. We have our free meetups, and we have our school program. We're trying to help as many people as we can. Thank you.